Thank you for joining us for the final segment of Testosterone Fantasy Sports. I'm very pleased to be joined right now by an esteemed guest of WCCO Radio, Eric Nelson. Good to have you on the show,
What's up,
man.
J-Train? The other J-Train?
All right, man. Thanks for coming on, dude.
Yeah, great to be on with you. You guys just ooze knowledge. It's amazing.
Ooze something.
I don't know, but it is definitely a lot of fun to sit on the panel, talk about something that we're all so very passionate about, and that's the NFL. And I mean, when you're talking about the NFL, Eric, I don't think it's matched by any other sport in America right now.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, it has a global presence, but especially in this country, it is dominant. I mean, you got the Major League Baseball playoffs going on right now, and I watch that. I'm sure you guys do.
The playoffs are
yeah,
on
I
right
mean,
now?
it's great, but you know what? If it's a choice between a football game in the regular season and the MLB playoffs, I'm still going to lean toward the NFL. I just love the intrigue from week to week.
Yeah, the NFL's the best. It's the top one. I mean, I love the Yankees, so I'm hoping that they, can win their series. No, I'm just
What?
I'm kind of sad about it. I mean,
There's bugs flying around
for
the
me,
sky.
it's like the Twins. It's like the Twins, and then it's both the New York teams. So I'm just like baseball, schmaseball.
And I mean, it's good that the NFL is so cool because there's not a lot of good sports stuff going on in our own hometown right now.
Right.
I mean, I've lived here since '94, and I don't really remember a worse time to be a Minnesota sports fan, but still the NFL just grips me and grabs my attention.
Yeah, I think Minnesota right now is the land of 10,000 losses. There's no doubt about that. And I always say there's nothing like an NFL Sunday across America. And I know you guys feel the way I do.
Yeah.
It starts out early with the pregame shows.
Yep.
You've got your noon kickoffs. Then you've got your 3 or 3:15 kickoffs. You've got Sunday Night Football on NBC. They do a tremendous job. And then you roll it over into Monday night. And the great thing about the NFL is you can plan your week around it.
Right.
There's
Totally.
no mystery as to starting times,
Yeah.
like with college football or these baseball playoffs. And I think that's why this country has gravitated toward it.
Yeah, that and because it's such a wonderful sport to watch on television, the way the field lays out
Right.
and the contact element, Jeff, I know that's something that you're really passionate about, just watching guys
Right.
crack heads.
Yeah, they're like the new gladiators. So, and this country is perfect for that kind of a sport. So, I'm super excited, and I know that it's been tough as Viking fans because this is the land of 10,000 losses.
Ugh.
So, are we going to have 10,001 losses after this week?
Well, I really think we probably will. I mean, realistically, we'll dive into this matchup right now then. Minnesota traveling to Chicago. The Bears are a team that looked to be totally on the ropes just 1 week ago. Made the quarterback change a couple weeks back. Lovie Smith kind of really seemed to be grasping at straws, going with Brian Griese. But now 1 week later, they have some life, the Bears do, and what a better opponent there's no better opponent for them really than the Minnesota Vikings. As a Purple fan, Eric, I want to be optimistic, but the Vikes are going to get killed this weekend, right?
It's a tough venue, Soldier Field. I've been down there a few times. Those fans get into it. They're passionate. And I think Lovie Smith may have saved his season when he finally decided the Rex Grossman experiment, if you will, wasn't going to work. He may have lost his locker room had he not made that move.
Right.
He had the veteran waiting in the wings. I give Brian Griese a lot of credit. He sat there, kept his mouth shut, even though he knew maybe he should have played last season, let alone have to wait till this year. So the thing about the Bears, and I heard you say it earlier, Jesse, in the show, the Green Bay Packers let the Chicago Bears off the hook last Sunday night. If the Packers win that game, they have a 4-game bulge over the Chicago Bears. The Bears are done in the division.
Right.
Now, I know Detroit's knocking on the door, but I think Green Bay would have been able to say we're going to win the North had they beaten Chicago. Now, Detroit's in it, no doubt. Chicago's back in it. And Minnesota, if they could win Sunday, could get back in it. But I don't see it happening.
Jeff, I mean,
It would be awesome to see Minnesota win that game.
We want to be optimistic, but I mean, we got to be realistic here on this panel. I mean, is there any way the Purple can win this road game in Soldier Field?
Well, I think it's going to be pretty tough. I mean, we're coming off our bye, so that definitely helps. I think that because we were on bye last week, one thing that Brad Childress and the coaching staff does really well is they're good at scripting that first drive. So I feel like we have a guaranteed touchdown because of 2 weeks to prepare that first drive. So the adjustments have always been the problem, for the Vikings. And so for me, it's kind of like if we get both of our running backs going in this game, we have a shot, but I really don't think the Bears are going to win. They're going to be excited coming off that big win at Lambeau, and they're going to feel like a lot of confidence. Their defense is going to be up big, and I just think they're going to get their tight ends involved early, and the tight ends always produce against our defense. So, the Bears are going to be tough.
Yeah, I agree. The Bears are tough. Their defense is tough. It seems like a couple weeks ago they were really on their heels, had some guys that were injured and down, and now some of those players are starting to come back. I'm kind of looking, like you said, Eric, at their victory last week as really a season changer for them, breathing a breath of life into their team as a whole. But if they're going to win this game, it's going to have to be on the shoulders of this journeyman quarterback, because let's face it, they're 27th in the league in rushing, Eric. They're facing the #1 ranked rush D, allowing 62 yards a game only are the Vikes. So it's really Brian Greasy if they're gonna put it together, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think Cedric Benson, they're not really that happy with him in Chicago now. I mean, Thomas Jones ran hard, he produced, but he and Ced Benson could not exist in that locker room, so they sent Thomas Jones to the Jets. Brian Greasy is going to have to come through. Now, the thing you have to realize about Brian Greasy, he tried to follow John Elway out there in Denver, and John Elway's more popular than skiing in Colorado. Yeah. I mean, he's the guy out there. So maybe you give him a flyer there. This might be a better situation. You brought up the tight ends. I think that's a great point. Desmond Clark and Greg Olsen were the playmakers last Sunday in Green Bay. I think back to the Vikings game against Kansas City at Week 3. I was at Arrowhead, and for the first half, I kept saying to some of the people in the press box, when are the Chiefs going to realize they have Tony Gonzalez? Well, in the second half, they did, and the Chiefs gashed the Vikings down the middle with Gonzalez and the rookie Dwayne Bowe. I would expect the Chicago Bears, who don't run the ball well, are probably going to try to do the same thing with the tight ends. They don't have dynamic wideouts, but I think they have guys who can make plays. Let's face it, the Vikings against the pass are vulnerable.
Yeah, they're 30th in the league against the pass right now, Jeff. And Cedric Benson averaging just 3 yards per carry. It really appears to me that if Minnesota has any chance to win this game, they've got to come up with an answer to stop the tight ends, essentially, for the Bears.
Well, it's been the story of the Vikings all year that our defense has kept us in games, and at the end of games against both the Chiefs and against the Packers, our defense made the opportunity to give us the ball, and our offense hasn't been able to produce at the end. So our defense, I think, is going to come up big and be able to, I mean, Brian Greasy's not that good. So we should have a couple of turnovers in the game. I think that we'll get an interception and possibly a touchdown on defense. But the question is going to be if the Vikings are going to win, whichever quarterback plays, which I expect it to be Tarvaris, is he going to be able to get us the victory? And that's how teams beat the Vikings. They put the ball in the quarterback's hands and they say, beat us through the air.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have 4 offensive touchdowns to this point in the season, 3 defensive touchdowns.
Right.
It's definitely laughable. I mean, Eric, supposedly this is a kick-ass offense.
Yeah.
What's the deal?
Well, I laughed a couple of weeks ago. Dante Culpepper, the guy they ran out of here, accounted for 5 TDs by himself when Oakland beat Miami. So, yeah, it is laughable. And you talked about scripting that first series, Brad Childress, Darrell Bevel and company, and they do that. And you know what? If you look at the Childress regime, the first series has been usually the best offensive series of almost every game. It tells me they're not a good ad-lib coaching staff, that they can't coach on the fly. Because, again, I hearken back to the Kansas City game, a game they should have won. And they did not make the kind of coaching moves late in the first half, late in the game when they're trying to tie it up. And I think they've got to get more creative. And they got this kid, Adrian Peterson. And you know what?
Who? Put him, just keep him on the bench in the fourth quarter.
Take him off the milk carton and put him into the football game and let him play. He's a young guy. He's in the prime of his career. You're paying him a ton of money. Don't worry about if he's going to get hurt or if you're going to wear him down. If you start to wear him down, then you get Chester Taylor into the game. Chester Taylor's a nice counterpunch.
What I don't understand about the coaching staff with Adrian is if they're worried about getting him hurt, why are they putting him back to return kicks?
That's crazy.
And they're saying that they don't want to get him hurt so they're not running him as much in the second half. They want to get Chester going. Well, I can understand that, but then don't return him.
Yeah, I mean,
it's wild.
There's no more dangerous play in all of sports, really, than hitting that wedge at full speed as a kick returner. And when I see AP on the field returning kicks, as a Vikings fan, I get pissed off.
Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And the other thing I think Sunday that could come into play, if I'm the special teams coach of the Vikings, I am telling Chris Kluwe and Ryan Longwell, kick the ball into Lake Michigan as opposed to putting it into the hands of Devin Hester.
Totally.
That guy's a game breaker. Along with great defense and Hester's returns last year, that got the Bears into the Super Bowl. I think it's a possible win for the Vikings. They got to play lights-out defense. They've got to get some turnovers. And they have to score a couple of offensive touchdowns. But that said, I look into my crystal football. I just don't see it happening. Tavares Jackson he's learning.
They still have yet to let him throw the ball into the end zone even. To me, I think we need to get Sidney Rice more involved, and also one of our tight ends. I mean, I would take, Shanko or Owens or even Jimmy Kleinsasser. He's still on our team, right?
Right.
Let him try to catch the ball in the end zone. Let's throw the ball into the end zone.
Well, I think what we're saying is just echoing the sentiments of Vikings fans out there everywhere. I mean, if this is a kick-ass offense, if this coaching staff came here with the offensive genius tag attached, let's see that. Through the first season and a half here, we've seen a very stagnant, very simple, very bread and butter, ordinary offense that's quite frankly just ineffective. And we've got a great playmaker on our squad in Adrian Peterson. I want to see AP get the ball 20 to 25 times in this game. I know the Bears are traditionally pretty stout against the run, but AP's our only playmaker on offense.
Right.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and it really is a dink-dunk attack. One thing I didn't like last year, if you're going to dink and dunk and play this West Coast offense and try to move the chains, control the ball, Jermaine Wiggins last year was invisible.
Yeah.
He's perfect. If it's 3rd and 7, he'll get you 8 yards. He'll make the catch. You got Shanko now. He didn't really even factor into the offense until the Kansas City game.
Yep.
So start using your tight end. I think the tight end is underused in this offense. It seems pretty simple on paper, but they don't seem to be very flexible in their approach.
Right.
One thing's for sure, they can't fall behind in this game because this is not an offense built to come back.
Right.
Yeah, the Vikings have really set a new standard for boring football. And the West Coast offense is already boring, and now our team is making it, like the new fashion to be more boring. It's
well,
crazy.
what we have to hope is that we can win a couple games because, Jeff, that boring factor is going to kick in the season ticket sales that are already lacking right now. I mean, realistically, Vikes fans, if we're staring in the face of a 4-12 season, we're not going to be watching our favorite team play in their home games in November and December. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that stadium's going to be feeling like it's got 20,000, open seats in it.
Right.
So, it's terrible, around here. It's sad. It's almost like last week while they were on bye was kind of a relief that we weren't going to lose.
It was a relief.
And now they're back, and now we're all nervous again.
Well, and I'm also concerned along the lines of the ticket sales. I mean, if they come back from Chicago and Dallas on this trip with 2 more losses, that Eagles game is a blackout waiting to happen.
Exactly.
Because nobody here cares about the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm concerned as I look down the road, too. This is a football team that wants a new stadium and, in my opinion, deserves one. The Minnesota Vikings are our most popular franchise in this state over the Twins, the T-Wolves, the Wild, whoever. But that said, our politicians, they don't have backbones to begin with. And they're going to put this all on wins and losses, and they're going to say, well, if they're not selling tickets in the Metrodome and they're not winning, we're certainly not going to fund a new stadium. So I think this really has repercussions if they can't get it turned around.
I couldn't agree anymore, but when we do this show, we like to try our best to look at things through purple shaded glasses. We like to try to be optimistic, and I know that in this league on a weekly basis, anything can happen. I'm still believing that Tavares Jackson has some sort of magic in him, guys. I got to see something positive coming out of this squad down the stretch, something to give a little hope.
To me, it's vital that Tavares does something for his own confidence level. I mean, we got to see him get a little bit of the run going, and I really want to see them allow him to throw the ball in the end zone because I think a thrown touchdown for this kid would mean the world for his confidence.
I agree. Well, we thank you for joining the show so far. This is Eric Nelson, esteemed guest on our panel. We're talking about the Vikes right now. We're going to shift gears just a little bit and talk about the NFL in general. What a crazy season it's been so far, guys. There have been so many big surprises to this point. Teams that we thought would be great are now really struggling to get a win. And some teams that we, quite frankly, thought would suck are kind of rising to the top. And so, I just thought in the rest of the time that we have here with our viewers, I'd like to talk about some of the teams that have been really big surprises to you guys throughout the season and some of the teams that have been disappointments. So I'll start out by posing the question to you, Eric. Which team so far in this season, 5 weeks in, has been the biggest surprise to you?
Well, as I look at it, I would have to say the Pittsburgh Steelers coming out of the gate at 4-1, being downright dominant on defense. I mean, they pitched a shutout against Seattle last week at Heinz Field. Mike Tomlin, I liked what he did here in Minnesota. I still didn't know what he'd do in Pittsburgh because he's so young and was so unproven as a head coach. But it's clear that Dan Rooney, when he sat there and listened to Mike Tomlin, clearly bought into what he said, and I think he's hired the right guy. It's just too bad Minnesota could not have kept Mike Tomlin here, because he looks like a coach. He's got it. You know, he looks athletic. He's a young-looking guy, good-looking guy, and I think he connects with the players. So I'd say the Steelers, and I'd also say Washington. Washington's 3-1, and I'm going to be real curious to see how they handle Brett Favre on that not-so-frozen tundra on Sunday.
Yeah, Washington's defense has been a big surprise to this point. I mean, there was a moment in time when I was really starting to question if the NFL game had kind of passed Joe Gibbs by, and it looks so far throughout this season that no, it hasn't. He's known what he's been doing throughout his time there. They've got the two-headed rushing attack, so I couldn't agree more. They've been a very big surprise, but, you know, on the flip side, you talk about teams that haven't been surprised, been pretty monumental disappointments, Jeff. I know we both agreed that the Rams were supposed to do something this season, and they've come out of the gates 0-5.
Yeah, well, I mean, injuries have pretty much plagued this team. You know, losing Orlando Pace like that, he's possibly the best next to Anthony Munoz that we'll ever see, and now to not have him, we saw Mark Bulger get happy feet, and now he's injured too. Steven Jackson with the injury. Their team's really kind of fallen apart here in the beginning of the season. So, I mean, I'm surprised, because we saw that preseason game and they looked really good. And they were talking, you know, NFC West champions and possibly going to the Super Bowl. And a lot of people thought they were going to.
Right.
And now fantasy teams are getting killed by Rams.
Another team that's killing fantasy owners right now is the Saints. I mean, we would have never thought they would be winless after 5 weeks. Yeah, they've only played 4 games, but the Saints, I look at them, Eric, and I think this is a team that realistically might struggle to win 5 games.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I look at their scores, kind of indicate to me they're not very good. With the exception of last week against Carolina, when John Casey beat them with that long field goal late, they've been blown out of most of their games. They weren't competitive against Indianapolis. You know, I know on a Monday night, Vince Young chewed them up at the Superdome, and Drew Brees looked like the young quarterback, not Vince Young.
Right.
So I'd say the Saints are a huge disappointment. Also, I want to throw in the Cincinnati Bengals.
Right.
I got family down there in Cincinnati. I've gone to some games at Paul Brown. It's a great venue to watch football in. But I thought 2 years ago when they won the AFC North, got beat by the Steelers in that playoff game, yet were playing well until Carson Palmer got hurt. I thought they were ready to get over the hump.
Right.
They took a step back last year. They're 1-3 now, and I think unless they get this thing cranked up pretty quickly, there's going to be an implosion. Chad Johnson is too competitive.
Right.
Carson Palmer is too good. And Marvin Lewis said it, I think, after that Monday night loss. Look, if you don't want to be here, don't come here.
Right.
They got to right the ship in Cincinnati.
Well, it kind of makes you wonder. I mean, they have so many problems off the field all the time, and we kind of make light of it, Jeff. Is Marvin Lewis on the hot seat here? I mean, he's really brought a new era of football to this team, but people are ready to see him win some games, and it just doesn't seem to be translating.
Yeah, I think he's on the hot seat, and then it scalded his fanny because now he has to walk with that that crutch. Yeah, he's having a hard time. I mean, at 1-3, their team now they have to go to Kansas City, and a game on the road at Arrowhead is kind of a tall order for their team. And another thing to me is that, you know, Carson Palmer, he's great on the field, but he has yet to really, in my eyes, lead this team to victory.
Right, exactly. You look at the wide receiver position on this squad, and it seems like that's where their vocal leadership comes from. And if history is any indication, those loudmouth wide receivers can kind of cause a team to implode more times than not. I mean, it definitely kind of reeks that Palmer hasn't stepped forward and taken the reins from some of his teammates and really said, hey, I'm the leader here. Put this team on his back. But one other thing that I wanted to talk about quickly before we end the show is the AFC West, guys. This is a division that a lot of people thought had a Super Bowl favorite, San Diego Chargers. Yeah, the turnover in the coaching staff in the offseason. Denver Broncos, some people thought they were going to be a team on the rise this year. But as it sits right now, Eric, the Oakland Raiders are 2-2, and they're atop this division.
Yeah, Bloomington Jefferson's Lane Kiffin is the head coach.
Right.
And they got a big game at San Diego. I'm going to watch that one closely. I'd like to see Oakland win. They play good defense. Dante Culpepper's the quarterback. Yeah, I can pull for the Raiders. This is a little different Raider group than we're used to seeing.
Right.
But San Diego, Norv Turner to me, this is his third shot as being a head coach. I don't know how he got a third chance. He does not reek of leadership to me. He's just not a head coach. He's a great offensive coordinator, but I think that eventually will hold them back, probably already has. I think Denver's an imposter. You don't lose at Mile High like they did 41-3 to the Chargers in Kansas City. I mean, we don't know which Chiefs team is going to show up. So I think that AFC West is up for grabs. And if the Raiders can win this week at Qualcomm, I think the Raiders are your favorite to maybe win the whole thing.
That's crazy because the Raiders were the worst team in football last season, and to see what a coaching change does in a situation like that, to see a team totally turn its fortunes around this quickly, kind of speaks to how out of touch with the times Art Shell really was last year.
Well, they got Dante.
Yeah, exactly.
And they got Dante and they got rid of Randy. I mean,
right.
it sounds kind of odd, that you'd think the way Moss is playing in New England, which tells me that when interested, Randy Moss is the greatest receiver in football, and he wasn't very interested out there in Oakland.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it has to do with chemistry, and you've been experiencing some of the best chemistry on television when it comes to talking about fantasy football, when it comes to talking about the NFL. It's Testosterone Fantasy Sports. Check out our Fat Chat on our website, testosteronesports.com. Right after the show, we're going to be on there talking to you about your matchup-related questions, helping you figure out who you're going to play in your matchups this weekend. Because if you want to win,
you must tune in
to Testosterone Fantasy Sports.